What if I told you that the most dangerous enemy you will ever face is not out there in the world but sitting right between your ears? What if the voice that whispers you are not enough, or this will never work, or who do you think you are, is not protecting you but slowly destroying everything you could become? Here is something that will change how you see yourself forever. You are not your thoughts. Read that again. You are not your thoughts. You are the one listening to them. You are the awareness behind the noise. And that distinction is the key that unlocks everything. Most people live their entire lives believing they are passengers in their own minds. They think that thoughts just happen to them, like weather, like accidents, like fate. They wake up anxious and assume anxiety is who they are. They feel doubt and conclude they are simply a doubtful person. They experience fear and build an identity around being afraid. But what if all of that is a lie? What if the story you have been telling yourself about who you are is just old software running on autopilot? What if the thoughts that feel so true, so inevitable, so permanent are nothing more than echoes of voices that were never yours to begin with? This is not a book about positive thinking. I am not going to ask you to smile in the mirror or repeat phrases you do not believe. This is something far more powerful and far more dangerous to the limited version of yourself that has been running the show. This is about becoming the architect of your own mind. This is about taking the pen from the hand of everyone who ever told you what to think and writing your own story from this moment forward. By the time you finish this journey, you will understand exactly how your mind works, and more importantly, how to make it work for you. You will learn why some people seem to naturally think in ways that create success while others are trapped in mental prisons they do not even know exist. You will discover that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is not about talent or luck or circumstance. It is about the invisible architecture of thought that creates your reality moment by moment. But I need to warn you about something. Once you see how this works, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand that you have been unconsciously building a life based on thoughts that were programmed into you by parents, teachers, media, and your own repeated mistakes, you become responsible. The victim story dies. The excuses evaporate. You realize that from this moment forward, every thought you entertain is a choice. Every mental pattern you allow to continue is a decision. Every limitation you accept is a vote for the life you do not want. Are you ready to stop being a tenant in your own mind and become the owner? Are you ready to evict the thoughts that have been living rent-free in your head while sabotaging your dreams? Are you ready to discover that the version of you that you have always sensed was possible is not fantasy but simply a matter of mental engineering? Then let us begin. Chapter 1. The Observer Behind the Noise. Close your eyes for a moment and notice what happens. Thoughts arise. Maybe you thought about what you need to do later, or wondered where this is going, or felt a flicker of doubt or excitement. Now ask yourself this question. Who noticed those thoughts? Who was aware that thinking was happening? There is something in you that can watch the mind like watching a movie. There is a presence that exists before thought, during thought, and after thought. This observer, this witness, this awareness is what you actually are. And it has a power that most people never discover. When you are identified with your thoughts, you have no leverage. You are the wave being tossed by the ocean. But when you recognize that you are the ocean itself, that thoughts are simply waves rising and falling within your awareness, everything changes. You gain the ability to choose. You develop the capacity to select which waves to ride and which to let pass by. This is not philosophy. This is practical neuroscience. Your brain produces thousands of thoughts every day based on past programming, current stimuli, and random neural firing. Most of these thoughts are repetitive. Studies suggest that the vast majority of what you think today is identical to what you thought yesterday. Your mind is essentially a thought factory running the same production line day after day, year after year, creating the same mental products and wondering why life feels so stuck. But the factory can be retooled. The production line can be changed. Because here is what neuroplasticity research has proven beyond any doubt. Your brain is not fixed. It is not set in stone by age 25 or any other age. Your neural pathways are constantly being shaped by what you think, feel, and do. Every thought you think either strengthens existing pathways or begins creating new ones. This means that the mental patterns causing you pain right now are not permanent features of who you are. They are simply well-worn trails that can be allowed to fade while new trails are blazed. Think of your current thought patterns like paths through a dense forest. Some of these paths have been walked so many times they have become highways. Wide and clear and easy to follow. When a certain trigger occurs, your mind automatically takes that familiar highway. Someone criticizes you and instantly your mind races down the highway of self-doubt that was paved in childhood. You face a new opportunity and your mind speeds down the highway of fear that was built by past failures. But paths that are not used become overgrown. And new paths that are walked consistently eventually become highways themselves. This is the mechanism of mental transformation. Not fighting your thoughts but redirecting traffic. Not suppressing negative patterns but building positive alternatives that become the new default routes. The first step is becoming the observer. Practice watching your thoughts without immediately believing them or acting on them. When a thought arises, simply notice it. Oh, there is worry. There is self-criticism. There is fear about the future. There is replaying of that old memory. Do not judge these thoughts as good or bad. Just see them, name them, and in that seeing you create space. In that naming you reclaim power. Because here is the secret. A thought you are identified with controls you completely. But a thought you can observe becomes just another piece of data. It loses its grip. It becomes something you can evaluate rather than something that evaluates you. This observer capacity is like a muscle. It strengthens with use. Every time you catch yourself lost in thought and return to awareness, you perform one repetition. Every time you notice a negative pattern starting to spin and you step back to watch it, you build mental muscle. Over time, you will find that the gap between trigger and response grows wider. You will have more time to choose. More space to select a thought that serves you rather than being hijacked by thoughts that harm you. Chapter 2. The programming that runs your life. You did not choose most of what you think. This is one of the most important and most uncomfortable truths about the human mind. The thoughts that feel so personal and so true were largely installed by forces outside your control. Your mental operating system was programmed during the years when you had no defenses and no filters. Between birth and approximately age 7, your brain operated primarily in theta and alpha waves. These are the same brainwave states that hypnotherapists use to access the subconscious mind. During these years, you were essentially in a constant state of hypnosis, absorbing everything around you as direct programming. Whatever your parents said about money, about relationships, about what you were capable of, about how the world works, went straight into your mental software without any critical analysis. This is why you can intellectually know something is irrational while emotionally feeling it to be absolutely true. Your logical adult mind understands that one failure does not make you a failure as a person. But if you were told repeatedly as a child that mistakes meant something was wrong with you, that programming runs deeper than logic can reach. Your conscious mind processes about 40 bits of information per second. Your subconscious processes over 11 million. Guess which one usually wins? The subconscious is like an iceberg with only a tiny portion visible above the waterline. Your conscious intentions and goals are up there in the sunlight. But the massive bulk of the iceberg lies beneath the surface, driving your behaviors, emotions, and automatic thoughts in ways you rarely recognize. This is why willpower so often fails. You are trying to steer a ship by moving the small visible portion while the enormous hidden mass pulls in another direction. But this is not a reason for despair. It is a reason for hope. Because the same mechanism that installed limiting programs can install empowering ones. The subconscious does not care whether a belief is true or helpful. It simply runs whatever software receives the most repetition and emotional intensity. This means you can become your own programmer. You can consciously install the mental software that creates the life you want. Start by auditing your current programming. What do you automatically think when you look in the mirror? What thoughts arise when you consider pursuing a big goal? What mental script plays when someone you find attractive shows interest in you? What do you assume about money, about success, about what is possible for someone like you? These automatic thoughts reveal your programming. They show you what was installed when you were too young to resist. Once you see the programming clearly, you can begin the upgrade process. This is not about lying to yourself or forcing beliefs that feel fake. It is about gradually introducing new patterns while reducing the reinforcement of old ones. Every time you catch an old limiting program running and consciously choose a different thought, you weaken the old pathway and strengthen the new one. Every time you question whether an automatic assumption is actually true, you loosen its grip on your perception. The thoughts you think most often become your mental defaults. So start thinking on purpose. Start choosing thoughts deliberately rather than accepting whatever your conditioning serves up. This is not easy. The old programs have momentum. They feel familiar, which the brain interprets as true and safe. But familiar does not mean correct. And safe does not mean good for you. Chapter 3. How thought becomes reality. Every single thing humans have ever created began as a thought in someone's mind. The device you are using to access this content existed first as imagination before becoming blueprint, before becoming prototype, before becoming the object in front of you. The building you are in was a thought before it was a plan, before it was construction, before it was structure. This pattern is so universal and so consistent that we rarely stop to appreciate its significance. Thought precedes physical reality. This is not mysticism. This is observable fact. But the connection goes deeper than just human creation. Your thoughts shape your perception of reality in ways that literally change what you can see and what opportunities you can notice. Your brain contains a network called the reticular activating system. Think of it as your attention filter. Every second your senses receive millions of bits of information, but you can only consciously process a tiny fraction. Your reticular activating system decides what gets through to awareness and what gets filtered out. And here is the key. It filters based on what you habitually think about. Have you ever decided you wanted a particular type of car and suddenly started seeing that car everywhere? The cars were always there. Your filter simply was not programmed to highlight them. Now apply this principle to opportunities, resources, and solutions. If your dominant thoughts focus on problems, your filter highlights evidence of problems. If your thoughts focus on scarcity, your filter shows you lack everywhere you look. But if you program your filter with thoughts of possibility and growth, it begins highlighting opportunities that were invisible before. This creates feedback loops that either lift you up or hold you down. Negative thoughts create negative emotions. Negative emotions lead to hesitant or self-sabotaging actions. Those actions create poor results that seem to confirm the original negative thought. The person caught in this loop has no idea they are creating their own evidence. They genuinely believe the world is against them or that success is for other people because everywhere they look they see proof. But positive thought loops work the same way in reverse. Empowering thoughts create confident emotions. Confident emotions drive bold, effective action. Bold action creates results that reinforce the empowering thought. The person riding this upward spiral seems to live in a different universe than the person trapped in the downward spiral, even when their external circumstances are nearly identical. This is why two people can experience the same setback and have completely different outcomes. One person thinks this failure means I should give up, and their filter immediately highlights all the reasons to quit while missing the lessons and opportunities hidden in the experience. Another person thinks this failure is teaching me something valuable, and their filter shows them exactly what they need to learn and where to try next. Same event, different thoughts, radically different trajectories. You are not just passively perceiving reality. You are actively co-creating it through the lens of your habitual thoughts. This is not about denying problems or pretending everything is perfect. It is about recognizing that your thoughts determine which aspects of reality you see and engage with. And since you can choose your thoughts, you can choose what kind of reality you participate in. Chapter 4. Breaking the trance of automatic thinking. Most people walk through life in a kind of trance. They believe they are making conscious choices when really they are running on mental autopilot. The same thoughts produce the same emotions, which drive the same behaviors, which create the same results day after day, year after year. And they wonder why nothing changes. This trance state is comfortable in a way. Automatic thinking requires no effort. You can coast through entire days without making a single conscious decision about what to think. Your programming handles everything seamlessly. But this comfort comes at a devastating cost. The autopilot is not flying you toward your dreams. It is flying you in circles around the same familiar territory you have always known. Breaking this trance requires what could be called aggressive awareness. Not passive noticing, but active, vigilant attention to your own mental processes. It means treating your thoughts like a scientist treats data, with curiosity rather than blind acceptance. It means asking questions you have never thought to ask. Is this thought true? Is it useful? Where did it come from? What would I think instead if I could choose anything? The first skill to develop is catching yourself in automatic patterns. Set random reminders throughout your day. When they go off, immediately notice what you were just thinking. Do not judge. Just observe. Over time you will start to see patterns. Certain situations trigger predictable thought sequences. Certain people activate specific mental programs. Certain times of day find your mind running in particular directions. Once you can see the patterns, you can interrupt them. The moment you notice an automatic thought is running, you have a choice point. You can let the program continue, or you can consciously choose a different thought. This interruption does not have to be dramatic. Simply saying to yourself, "There is that old pattern again," is often enough to break its momentum. The pause technique is powerful here. When you catch an automatic thought, take a deliberate breath before responding. This pause might only last 2 seconds, but those seconds change everything. They shift you from reactive to responsive. They give your conscious mind time to weigh in instead of letting the subconscious run the show. Questioning is another essential tool. When an automatic thought arises, ask yourself, is this absolutely true? How do I know this is true? What evidence contradicts this thought? What would I think if I had been raised by different parents in a different culture with different experiences? These questions do not always change the thought immediately, but they loosen its claim to being objective truth. The most important thing to understand is that automatic does not mean true. A thought that has been running for 20 years is not more valid than a thought you consciously choose today. Length of habit says nothing about accuracy or helpfulness. Your longest held beliefs might be your most limiting. The thoughts that feel most natural might be the ones causing the most damage. You are not obligated to believe everything you think. This simple recognition is revolutionary. Your mind produces thoughts constantly. Some are useful. Many are not. Some reflect reality. Many are distortions programmed in childhood. Your job is not to believe all of them, but to evaluate them. To be a conscious curator of your mental content rather than an unconscious consumer. Chapter 5. The Architecture of Empowering Thought. Now that you understand how thought shapes reality and how automatic patterns can trap you, it is time to learn how to deliberately construct thoughts that serve your highest good. This is not positive thinking in the superficial sense. This is thought engineering, strategic, intentional, precise. An empowering thought has specific characteristics. It moves you toward your goals rather than away from them. It opens possibilities rather than closing them. It increases your energy rather than draining it. It positions you as capable and growing rather than fixed and limited. Most importantly, it feels genuinely available to you. Not fake but reachable, not delusional but aspirational. The shift from limiting to empowering thoughts often comes through finding better questions. The mind is designed to answer questions. When you ask yourself, why am I such a failure, your brain dutifully searches for evidence of failure to answer the question. When you ask, why does nothing ever work out, your mind highlights all the times things went wrong. But ask yourself, what is one small step I could take right now, and your brain shifts into problem-solving mode. Ask, what can I learn from this situation, and your mind searches for lessons instead of reasons for despair. Questions direct mental focus, and focus determines what you find. So ask questions that point your mind where you want it to go. What is working well that I could build on? What would I attempt if I knew I could not fail? What does the best version of myself think about this situation? How have I overcome similar challenges before? What opportunity might be hidden in this difficulty? Beyond questions, there is the practice of thought replacement. This is not suppression. Suppression involves trying to push a thought away, which usually makes it stronger. Replacement involves acknowledging the thought and then consciously choosing to think something else instead. Oh, there is the worry thought. I noticed that. Now I am going to think about what I can actually control in this situation. For replacement to work, you need a library of empowering thoughts ready to deploy. Prepare specific replacements for your most common limiting patterns. If your mind often says, I cannot do this, have ready the replacement, I can learn to do this, or others have done this, and so can I. If your pattern is, people will judge me, have ready, most people are too busy thinking about themselves to judge me. If you default to things never work out for me, prepare, I am developing the skills to create better outcomes. The key is specificity. Vague positive thoughts have little power. But precise empowering thoughts that directly address your specific limiting patterns create real change. The thought, I am worthy, sounds nice, but I have unique abilities that I am still discovering, is more powerful because it gives your mind something concrete to work with. Practice generating empowering thoughts when you are calm and centered, so they are available when you are triggered or stressed. You cannot create good mental architecture while the building is on fire. Build your thought library during peaceful times so you can access it during storms. Chapter 6. Rewiring through repetition. Understanding that you can change your thoughts is necessary but not sufficient. Real transformation requires repetition. Your current thought patterns have been reinforced thousands of times over many years. They have the strength of mental highways carved deep into neural tissue. One conscious counter-thought does not undo that. But consistent repetition of new thoughts over weeks and months creates new highways while allowing the old ones to fade. This is where most people fail. They expect instant results. They try a new way of thinking for a few days, and when their old patterns persist, they conclude that change is impossible or that these techniques do not work for them. But they would never expect to get fit by going to the gym once. They would never expect to learn a language from a single lesson. Mental rewiring requires the same patience and consistency that any skill development requires. The research on habit formation suggests that new patterns take anywhere from 2 to 8 months to become automatic depending on complexity and individual differences. This means committing to daily mental practice for an extended period. Not until it feels easy, but until it becomes natural. Not until you feel like it, but until the new pattern is neurologically installed. Daily mental training should be as non-negotiable as brushing your teeth. Just as you maintain physical hygiene to prevent disease, you must maintain mental hygiene to prevent the accumulation of limiting thoughts. This might include morning intention setting, where you decide how you want to think that day. Midday check-ins, where you notice what thoughts have been dominant and redirect if needed. Evening review, where you assess which thoughts served you and which need adjustment. Affirmations can be powerful if done correctly. Most people use affirmations wrong. They repeat statements that feel completely false, hoping repetition will eventually make them feel true. But the subconscious tends to reject what it perceives as lies, creating resistance rather than installation. Effective affirmations are slightly ahead of your current belief level. Not so far ahead that they seem ridiculous, but far enough to represent real growth. If you currently believe "I am completely incompetent," then "I am the most competent person in the world" will not work. Your mind will reject it. But "I am developing greater competence every day," or "I have strengths that I am beginning to recognize," might feel accessible. Start where you can believe and gradually stretch forward as your self-perception shifts. Visualization adds another layer of power. When you vividly imagine thinking and behaving in new ways, your brain begins creating the neural infrastructure for those patterns. Athletes have known this for decades. Mental rehearsal activates the same neural pathways as physical practice. The brain does not clearly distinguish between vividly imagined experiences and actual ones. This means you can strengthen new thought patterns not just by thinking them, but by imagining yourself thinking them in various situations. Combine all these elements: daily practice of new thoughts, affirmations pitched at the edge of believability, visualization of yourself as a person who naturally thinks in empowering ways. Track your progress, celebrate small wins, and keep going long past the point where old patterns try to reassert themselves. Chapter 7. Emotional Mastery Through Thought. Emotions are not random experiences that happen to you. They are largely the result of your thoughts. This is simultaneously one of the most liberating and most challenging truths about human psychology. Liberating because it means you have far more control over your emotional state than you have been taught. Challenging because it removes the excuse that your feelings are someone or something else's fault. The thought-emotion connection works like this. An event occurs. You interpret that event through thought. That interpretation generates an emotional response. The emotion then influences your behavior, which creates results that often seem to confirm the original interpretation. Notice that the emotion does not come directly from the event. It comes from your thought about the event. This is why different people have completely different emotional responses to identical situations. The event is the same. The interpretations are different. And different interpretations create different emotions. Someone cuts you off in traffic. One interpretation is that person is a dangerous idiot, and the emotion is rage. Another interpretation is maybe they are rushing to an emergency, and the emotion is compassion. Another is traffic is unpredictable, and that is just how it goes, and the emotion is mild acceptance. Same event, wildly different emotional outcomes. The difference is thought. This does not mean you should never feel negative emotions or that pain is always the result of wrong thinking. Some situations genuinely warrant grief, anger, or fear. The goal is not emotional flatness. It is emotional choice. The ability to feel what the situation actually calls for rather than being hijacked by interpretations based on old programming or cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions are patterns of thought that consistently create unnecessary emotional suffering. All or nothing thinking, catastrophizing, mind reading, fortune-telling, personalization, filtering out the positive, magnifying the negative. These are not accurate ways of interpreting reality. They are bugs in human mental software. And they cause enormous emotional pain. Learning to identify these distortions in your own thinking is a powerful skill. When you feel a strong negative emotion, ask yourself, what was I just thinking? Then examine that thought for distortions. Was I assuming I knew what someone else was thinking? Was I predicting the worst possible outcome? Was I seeing the situation as all bad and ignoring any good? Was I making something about me that was not actually personal? Once you spot a distortion, you can choose a more balanced thought. Not a fake positive thought, but an accurate thought. If you were catastrophizing, you can acknowledge the realistic probability of the feared outcome. If you were mind reading, you can admit you do not actually know what the other person was thinking. If you were filtering out positives, you can consciously add them back into your assessment. The goal is not to feel good all the time. The goal is to feel what is appropriate for the actual situation rather than feeling based on distorted interpretations. This creates emotional freedom. You are no longer at the mercy of random thoughts that hijack your mood. You have tools to examine your thinking and adjust your emotions accordingly. Chapter 8. The voice in your head. You have a constant companion. A narrator who comments on everything you do and experience. This inner voice can be your greatest ally or your cruelest enemy depending on what it habitually says. For many people, this voice is relentlessly critical. It highlights every flaw. It reminds them of every failure. It predicts future disappointment. It compares them unfavorably to everyone around them. They would never talk to another person the way their inner voice talks to them. This inner voice was shaped by the outer voices you heard growing up. If you were surrounded by criticism and harsh judgment, your inner voice learned to speak that language. If you were surrounded by encouragement and support, your inner voice learned a different dialect. The good news is that the inner voice can be retrained at any age. You are not stuck with the mental narrator you inherited. Start by simply noticing the tone of your inner voice. Is it kind or cruel? Patient or demanding? Encouraging or defeating? Many people are so accustomed to harsh self-talk that they do not even recognize it as harsh. It just seems normal, but imagine speaking to a beloved friend the way you speak to yourself internally. Would you ever say those things out loud to someone you cared about? If not, why do you accept saying them to yourself? The goal is to develop an inner voice that speaks to you the way a wise, compassionate mentor would. Not someone who ignores your mistakes or pretends everything is perfect, but someone who acknowledges difficulties while also reminding you of your capabilities. Someone who gives honest feedback with genuine care. Someone who challenges you to grow while also accepting you as you are. Practice catching your inner critic in the act. When you notice harsh self-talk, pause and ask yourself, what would I say to a good friend in this situation? Then say that to yourself instead. This feels awkward at first because your brain is wired for the familiar pattern. But with repetition, the kinder voice becomes more natural and the harsh voice loses its automatic dominance. You can also experiment with changing the quality of your inner voice. If your mental critic speaks in a serious, intense tone, try hearing the same words in a silly cartoon voice. This can immediately reduce the emotional impact of the criticism. Or try hearing the words at a much lower volume or much faster speed or from a great distance. These changes in quality shift how your brain processes the information and can weaken patterns that have felt overwhelming. The most advanced practice is developing what could be called the inner ally. This is a voice that actively coaches and encourages you. That reminds you of your strengths when you face challenges. That speaks possibility when you feel stuck. That celebrates your efforts regardless of outcome. This inner ally can be consciously cultivated through deliberate internal dialogue. When you catch yourself thinking, I cannot do this, consciously respond with a more supportive thought like, I have handled hard things before and I can learn to handle this. Chapter 9. When the storm hits. No matter how skilled you become at thought management, there will be times when negative thought spirals take hold. A trigger event occurs and before you know it, your mind is racing through worst-case scenarios, self-criticism, and catastrophic predictions. The thoughts build on each other, creating emotional intensity that feels impossible to stop. These spirals can derail your day, your week, or longer if you do not know how to handle them. The first key is early recognition. The sooner you catch a spiral starting, the easier it is to interrupt. Learn your personal early warning signs. These might include physical sensations like tension in your chest or shoulders or stomach. They might include emotional cues like increasing anxiety or irritability or a sense of dread. They might include mental patterns like racing thoughts or repetitive worrying or difficulty concentrating. When you notice these signs, treat them as alarms telling you to intervene immediately. The circuit breaker technique involves taking immediate action to interrupt the spiral before it gains more momentum. This might mean physical movement. Go for a walk. Do jumping jacks. Change your location. Movement shifts your physiology, which shifts your mental state. It is very difficult to maintain a negative thought spiral while vigorously moving your body. Deep breathing is another powerful circuit breaker. Slow, deliberate breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which counters the stress response that negative spirals produce. Breathe in slowly. Hold briefly. Exhale even more slowly. Repeat until you feel the intensity decreasing. This is not a technique to use after the spiral has been spinning for an hour. This is for immediate intervention at the first sign of trouble. The zoom-out technique involves consciously pulling back from the immediate situation to see a bigger picture. When caught in a spiral, everything feels urgent and permanent. But stepping back reveals that this moment is one small segment of a much longer life. Ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? What would I tell someone else facing this exact situation? How have I gotten through similar difficulties before? What might I be learning from this experience that I cannot see right now? These questions break the tunnel vision that spirals create. Sometimes the best response is simply allowing the storm to pass without adding to it. Spirals feed on engagement. The more you resist them, fight them, or argue with the thoughts, the stronger they become. Paradoxically, sometimes acknowledging this is a difficult moment and I am having a lot of negative thoughts right now without trying to immediately fix it allows the intensity to naturally decrease. Observe the spiral without becoming fully identified with it. Watch the thoughts like clouds passing through a sky that remains unchanged. Chapter 10. Building Mental Strength. Just as physical muscles grow stronger through progressive challenge and recovery, mental strength develops through facing cognitive and emotional challenges while practicing good recovery habits. You cannot become mentally strong by avoiding everything difficult. But you also cannot become strong by constantly overwhelming yourself without adequate rest and rebuilding. Mental strength includes the ability to persist through discomfort, to maintain focus when distraction beckons, to stay committed to long-term goals when short-term gratification tempts you, to keep thinking empowering thoughts when circumstances seem to contradict them, to get back up after being knocked down, to maintain emotional stability when chaos surrounds you. These capacities are not fixed traits. They are skills that develop through practice. Start by deliberately practicing focus and concentration. In an age of constant distraction, the ability to direct and hold attention has become rare and valuable. Begin with short periods of focused work or meditation and gradually extend them. Every time you choose to return attention to your task rather than giving in to distraction, you perform a mental repetition that builds strength. Practice discomfort tolerance through small challenges. Take cold showers. Fast occasionally. Work out past the point of wanting to quit. Have difficult conversations you have been avoiding. Each of these experiences teaches your mind that discomfort is survivable and temporary. This learning transfers to other areas of life. When negative thoughts create emotional discomfort, a mind trained in discomfort tolerance does not panic or immediately seek escape. It knows that difficult feelings pass. Develop resilience by reframing setbacks as training opportunities. Every failure, every rejection, every disappointment is a chance to practice maintaining empowering thoughts under pressure. This does not mean pretending failures do not hurt. It means using them intentionally for growth rather than allowing them to reinforce limiting beliefs. Ask, what can this teach me? How can I get better from this? What did I do right that I can build on? What would I do differently next time? Recovery is as important as challenge. Mental strength cannot be built through constant stress any more than physical strength can be built by exercising 24 hours a day. Build in periods of genuine mental rest. This means time away from decisions and problems and stimulation. Time in nature or in quiet or doing activities that replenish rather than deplete. Sleep is critical. A sleep-deprived brain cannot think clearly or manage emotions effectively. Protecting your sleep is protecting your mental performance. Chapter 11. The people around you. Your social environment profoundly influences your thought patterns whether you realize it or not. Humans are social creatures who unconsciously absorb the mental and emotional states of those around us. If you spend your time with people who think negatively, complain constantly, and expect the worst, you will find yourself pulled toward similar patterns. If you surround yourself with people who think expansively, take responsibility for their lives, and expect good things, you will be elevated toward their level. This is not about being judgmental or abandoning people who are struggling. It is about being strategic regarding who receives the majority of your time and attention. You can have compassion for negative people without absorbing their negativity. You can support struggling friends without letting their struggles become your identity. Take an honest inventory of your 5 closest relationships. What do these people habitually think and talk about? Do they focus on problems or solutions? Do they take responsibility for their lives or blame external factors? Do they believe in growth and possibility, or do they assume things cannot change? Do they lift your energy when you spend time with them or drain it? You may not be able to immediately change who is in your life. But you can change how you engage with different people. With energy drainers, set boundaries on how much time and attention you give them. With energy elevators, actively seek more connection. Look for mentors and role models who think the way you want to think. Read books and listen to content created by people whose mental patterns you want to adopt. Join communities focused on growth rather than complaint. Protect yourself during necessary interactions with negative people through conscious mental boundaries. Before the interaction, set an intention to maintain your own state regardless of theirs. During the interaction, practice observing their patterns without absorbing them. After the interaction, take time to consciously release any negativity you picked up and reconnect with your own empowering thoughts. Over time, as your own thought patterns strengthen, you will become more resilient to negative influence. What once would have pulled you down will simply roll off. What once would have triggered spirals will create minimal impact. This is the goal. Not isolation from challenging people, but immunity to their ability to derail your mental state. Chapter 12. Programming your future self. Visualization is not daydreaming. It is deliberate mental programming that creates neurological changes, preparing you for the outcomes you want to create. When you vividly imagine a future state, your brain cannot clearly distinguish that imagined experience from a real one. Neural pathways fire and strengthen. Your reticular activating system begins highlighting information relevant to your visualized outcome. Your subconscious starts working on the problem of how to get from here to there. Effective visualization requires engaging all your senses. Do not just see your future success. Hear what people are saying. Feel the emotions of achievement. Notice the physical sensations in your body. The more real and vivid you make the mental experience, the more powerful its programming effect. Visualize not just outcomes but processes. See yourself handling challenges along the way. Watch yourself staying calm when obstacles arise. Observe yourself thinking empowering thoughts when others would give up. This process visualization is crucial because it prepares you for the journey, not just the destination. When difficulties arise in reality, they feel familiar because you have already rehearsed handling them mentally. Create a detailed vision of your future self. Who is this person who has achieved what you want to achieve? How do they think about themselves and the world? What beliefs do they hold? How do they handle stress and setback? What is their internal dialogue like? How do they make decisions? Get so clear on this future self that you can consult with them. Ask yourself, what would my future self do in this situation? What would they think? This question alone can immediately shift your current patterns. The morning is a particularly powerful time for visualization. Your brain is in a receptive state and you have the opportunity to program your mind before the demands of the day take over. Spend even 5 minutes visualizing yourself moving through the day as your best self. See yourself thinking empowering thoughts, handling challenges with grace, and making progress toward your goals. This mental rehearsal primes your brain for the performance you want. Evening visualization can program your subconscious while you sleep. Before drifting off, imagine already being the person you are becoming. Feel the emotions of having achieved your goals. Let this be the final input your mind receives before sleep, when it is particularly impressionable and will continue processing through the night. Chapter 13. Daily practices that transform. Knowledge without application changes nothing. Everything you have learned must be translated into consistent daily practice, or it remains interesting information that fades from memory. The difference between people who transform their thinking and people who stay stuck is not in what they know but in what they actually do day after day. Build a morning mental routine that sets your mind for success before you engage with the world. This might include meditation to practice the skill of observing thoughts. Affirmations pitched at the edge of believability to install new programming. Visualization of your goals and your best self. Gratitude practice to shift focus toward what is working. Reading or listening to content that reinforces empowering patterns. Even 15 minutes of morning mental practice creates a different trajectory for your entire day. Throughout the day, practice mindful awareness of your thoughts. This does not require constant vigilance but periodic check-ins. Set a few reminders to pause and notice what has been running through your mind. When you catch limiting patterns, interrupt them and choose empowering alternatives. Track these pattern interrupts so you can see yourself building the habit over time. End each day with reflection. What thoughts served you today? What patterns did you successfully interrupt? What triggered spirals or negative states? What will you do differently tomorrow? This evening review consolidates learning and prepares you for continued improvement. It is also an opportunity for self-compassion. Acknowledge the efforts you made regardless of how perfect your practice was. Weekly deeper reviews help you see longer patterns. Are you making progress overall? Which thought patterns are proving most persistent? What techniques are working best for you personally? What aspects of your practice need adjustment? These regular assessments prevent drifting and ensure continued forward movement. Build accountability into your practice. Share your mental development goals with supportive others. Track your progress in ways you can see. Celebrate milestones no matter how small. Join communities of people working on similar growth. External accountability dramatically increases follow-through, especially during the inevitable periods when motivation wanes. Chapter 14. Becoming Unshakable. The ultimate goal of thought mastery is not constant happiness or the elimination of all negative thoughts. It is becoming someone whose mental state cannot be permanently derailed by external circumstances. Someone who can face any challenge while maintaining access to their best thinking. Someone who experiences difficult emotions without being controlled by them. Someone whose inner stability does not depend on outer conditions. This unshakable state is not reached overnight. It develops through consistent practice over months and years. Each time you successfully navigate a challenge while maintaining empowering thoughts, you build confidence in your ability to handle the next challenge. Each time you catch a spiral early and redirect it, you prove to yourself that you have power over your mind. Each time you choose a thoughtful response rather than a reactive response, you strengthen neural pathways that make thoughtful response more automatic. True mental strength is not rigidity but flexibility. The ability to adapt your thinking to different situations while maintaining alignment with your core values and long-term vision. Some situations call for aggressive confidence. Others call for patient acceptance. Some require detailed analysis. Others require intuitive leaps. Mental mastery means being able to shift between these modes rather than being stuck in one pattern regardless of context. Part of becoming unshakable is accepting that you are always a work in progress. There is no final destination where you have perfectly mastered your mind and never face another mental challenge. There is only continuous growth and refinement. Even the most mentally disciplined people encounter new challenges that test their abilities and reveal areas for further development. This is not failure. It is the nature of growth. The journey itself transforms you. Not just the destination but the daily practice of working with your mind. Each choice to think consciously rather than automatically changes you. Each moment of awareness strengthens your capacity for awareness. Each pattern interrupt builds your ability to interrupt patterns. You are not waiting to become a better thinker someday in the future. You are becoming one with every conscious choice you make. Closing. You stand now at a threshold. Behind you is the version of yourself that believed thoughts were uncontrollable. That assumed your mind just was the way it was. That accepted the programming installed in childhood as permanent features of your identity. That drifted through life as a passenger in your own consciousness. Ahead of you is the version of yourself you sensed was possible. The one who thinks with purpose and precision. Who chooses mental patterns deliberately. Who cannot be permanently derailed by circumstance or challenge. Who creates reality through the power of focused thought. Who has become the architect rather than the tenant of their own mind. The gap between these two versions is not crossed in a single leap. It is crossed through daily practice. Through thousands of small choices to think consciously rather than automatically. Through patience with yourself when you fall back into old patterns and recommitment to moving forward. Through the understanding that transformation is not an event but a process. Everything you have learned in these pages is useless if you do not apply it. Information does not change lives. Implementation does. The question is not whether these principles work. The question is whether you will do the work required to make them work for you. Your life will inevitably be shaped by your thoughts. The only question is whether you will shape those thoughts consciously or let them be shaped by chance and conditioning. Whether you will design your mental architecture or live in a structure built by others. Whether you will become the master of your mind or remain its unconscious servant. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. And now you know it. What will you think next?